Hello ladies and gents, I am Dippin, and welcome back to From the Depths Ashes of the Empire Community Edition. So this is actually a re-record of this particular episode. I have got some content at the end of the episode which I am going to be doing a voiceover of, but the audio for the majority of this episode was completely lost, which is really annoying because I did the entire episode, recorded it all, it's a nice showcase episode, and I lost all of it essentially. Well, I've still got the recording, but it's a showcase episode. It's basically easier to re-record it than it is to do a voiceover and figure out what on earth I was going on about at the time. The actual combat bit, I'm doing that as voiceover anyway, so it's not too much of an issue. Anyway, we have a lot of new designs to be utilising in this episode, and a few ones we're going to be actually having in as pairs. But to start with, we have the Alienoid ET2 by Archangler. This is a 33k design here. And so, what we have here is a fairly, almost a very tank-looking tank. It has a good number of simple autocannons at the top there, which can be used for anti-air purposes, which is very nice. And we have this main cannon here, which is really rather fancy. So it is a squash round, so pretty standard for tanks in Ashes of the Empire, a very nice round. What it does have is a lot of ejectors, and this is a very large number of ejectors. So what is this so good is that this means it has a big gun inside there with lots and lots of clips, and that means this rate of fire is pretty nice. Unfortunately, with the ejectors at the sides, it does mean that if the side gets hit by an explosion, these are going to vent quite heavily. Luckily though, it does have the gun is split in two, so if it vents one side, it doesn't vent all of the ammunition in the gun at once, so that is a bit of a bonus, I guess, for it there. So, one thing I have been considering is actually making a proper showcase series. So, what I need is a group of vehicles which I'd be able to showcase every vehicle against. But I've had some awesome submissions come through, and like this, I'm trying to showcase them against a fairly standard target, but to be honest, we don't really face the cannon tower that often. It's pinging off shells there. And so I don't think it's a very representative sample of how good it is in the game, but I want a fairly standard sort of vehicle or something there. So what I want to do is actually create some sort of proper test bed wherein I am able to check all the vehicles against a more of a standard setting. Because here, I'm trying against two cannon towers and a Bison, just trying to figure out what the shielding is like, so it's got double layer of shielding, but without a more stable tester, I won't really be able to figure that out. So yes, I was using things like the Taipan a lot, but yeah, so that is something I want to be looking at in the future, as well as the Quest for Nita campaign. I'm actually having a proper showcase where I can showcase all these awesome designs in a more even environment. This thing is just tanking through everything. I was thinking, oh, you know what, it's going to be able to take out, there we go, so it got hit at the front at last, but it just absorbed that strike. I was just wondering if it's actually ever going to vent the shells, but no, it's movement back and forth, maintaining a good speed. It's actually avoiding a ridiculous number of cram shells, and those which do hit are exploding on the outer shielding, so it's only doing periphery damage. And it's got a decent amount of repair there as well, particularly with Rambot on board. Are you ever going to stop killing targets? Good grief, it's not thinking on the Oxen. Oh. There we go, eventually it's actually losing some blocks, but yeah, this is going considerably better than I was anticipating. There we go, at last it gets hit at the top, but still does not vent its shells, though that's probably because it's unloaded all of them into its respective targets. Good grief. This is doing way better than I had anticipated there. and doing a lot better than it did in my first showcase. It just kind of exploded instantaneously then. Anyway, moving on to the next one, we have the Blixem TD by Alwana. So presuming this is a nice tank destroyer, and yes it is. So we shall send this against the cannon tower. So there's a couple of very slow firing slow missiles, and a very fast cannon shell. I expect this is again probably going to be squash, maybe having heat component in there as well. Yes, it is squash with the shaped secondary charge heat. A very good anti-tank round, and a very fast one at that. So this is going to keep itself nicely at range, utilising a forward-facing system here to maintain its aim at the target, and also having fairly simple but very effective aesthetic style. So although not very busy, the few parts of aesthetics which have been incorporated have been used to absolutely amazing effect. So just a few components here at the side, really making this look a lot more like tank tracks there. And even like the slight angle on these rockets, and just how the gantries have been put side by side like that, just really improves the aesthetics, but also without increasing the cost of the vehicle too much. Because one problem with aesthetics is that good aesthetics can end up costing a very large amount of materials to do, and so when they get blown off, that is a bit of a problem. It wasn't as effective as the previous vehicle, but it is quite a bit cheaper, and what it does do, it likes to stay at long range, and that is going to be very useful for keeping itself out of harm's way, because it's going to be able to continue firing at targets while everything else gets in close and dirty with their targets. Next up we have a group of Basilisks, or the noodle tank, which I affectionately called them by Reijo. So these are mostly based on feedback I gave in the episodes regarding that. So we have the Basher variants, because I said one of the things that would do really well with a noodle tank is have rams at the front. I think the AI is actually the same. It's just quite amusing. So it's taking a little while to get going here. Don't know why they're taking so long to get going, but oh, they're probably steam powered. So yes. So here they come, just dashing in towards the cannon tower. I don't think they're going to do too much damage to a cannon tower, particularly when they bash into each other. That's because structures seem to be pretty resilient to all sorts of ramming, though eventually it just breaks through and it's actually blowing up the ammo at the bottom there. And slowly but surely it's eating its way through the hull there of the cannon tower and will eventually be able to destroy it. Though I think it's actually got itself stuck, so that's probably the limit of its destructive capabilities at the moment. So let's just spawn in another one just for fun. So if I share them all in the same resource group, that should mean that they actually start working together, yeah, and then it can actually move in. So it hadn't got the resources to do the ramming, so there we go. Just bouncing off the cannon tower there. Slowly but surely it's going to do a bit of damage, but probably also get itself stuck, much like the other one here as well. But the more they go, they do keep on doing a load of damage. So we'll just destroy enemy vehicles and then spawn in a actual vehicle, so something the onager. So there are two designs there moving forwards, one flinging the other, and there we go. When they go along past a vehicle and they can go underneath a vehicle which can be lifted up, that's where the damage is going to be caused, unlike a structure which is basically stationary. But see, the onager is now sitting on top of the grinding wheels, and most of the internals have been ripped out. And so it's going to be AI deaded fairly soon, because the AI is just there. Yep, you can just about see the AI in that core there, which is currently getting eaten up by the rams there. So yeah, an incredible amount of damage caused there just by one of them getting in and doing absolutely evil things to the underbelly of the Onyx Watchcraft. So a lot better against vehicles than it is against structures. Next up we have the Blitzer. This is a 18mm spam cannon. And again, I just need to jump over to here and make sure the resource groups are all sorted. Okay, it's not doing as much damage as I thought it would actually. Being an 80mm spam cannon. So, pick up a frag inertial base bleed. I would actually expect this to be a decent enough round, but maybe there was a problem with its construction or something. Could probably have done better with a frag 180. Does make them do a lot more damage. Actually 180 frag, so let's have a quick look if that's the case. Okay, so I have edited the shells so it's just a 180 fragmentation now rather than 60. It essentially should do double the damage. So oops, let's throw another one in though. So it needs to be 2 of them. Yeah, and they are working together now. Let's see how much more damage it does to its their respective targets now. So a lot more of the fragments are actually missing, but does seem to be a considerable more amount of damage, particularly once the outer layer is hit and it just starts pinging all the fragmentations internally on their target there. See there, it's just periphery not doing much, but as soon as it breaks in through a couple of blocks, the amount of damage that's doing is insane. And it's a very small change, making quite a big difference to the output of the vehicle's firepower there. So next up, we have the Basilisk Burner, a laser version of the Basilisk, though unfortunately it is using a continuous laser, so I have a nasty feeling it isn't going to do too much damage, particularly when it gets hit like that. So let's just load in another couple. But no, simple lasers, well, simple lasers do a lot of damage, but yeah, lasers like this are just not doing much at all. I have a feeling that even against wooden vehicles, such as, so we'll send it against the large house, I have a feeling even against this, a continuous laser is just not going to be able to do anything to the vehicle. No. It's doing absolutely nothing. Not really a problem with the vehicle design, it's just continuous lasers, particularly on a small scale list, just don't do that much at all, which is a bit of a shame. So these more likely just going to be going around, just avoiding enemy shells and reducing damage to everything else. But in their own right, unfortunately, I can't see them being that much use. Next up though, we have the C01E52 MLRS by Reijo 56. This is a much more beefy long-range missile launcher, which uses beam rider missiles. And it got hit nastily at the rear end there. For a long-range missile launcher, that is not the way to go. So, it is very long-range. They have very long-range, slow-firing missiles. But they are having a little bit of difficulty meeting up with the beam rider. If they strike the target, they do a ton of damage. But it looks like trying to keep up with the beam rider is very difficult for a number of the missiles, particularly as it is moving on. I don't think they actually have ejectors, which is a bit of a problem. If it's moving directly away like that, looks like the missiles are doing well. But a couple of them, when it's moving sideways, are striking the side of the gantries, which knocks them off course a little bit. And if they can't stay nicely in line with these beam riders, they will lose the lock and end up missing their target quite severely. We'll be able to see that as this is now going in more an orbiting path than in a fleeing path. Let's see. There we go. Now you see, as it moves along, some of the missiles are hitting the rear of the gantry and being knocked off almost a 90-degree turn, and that is the problem. If they are able to lock on to the beam, they go in and do a huge amount of damage with their thumper heads, but just the sheer number of missiles which are missing the target due to being knocked off course by the gantry due to how missiles function, that is a bit of a problem. These could probably benefit with the use of ejectors, or rather than the fuel tank. I know, let's change one, rather than the fuel tank, let's change from a body to a torpedo propeller. Now the reason for the torpedo propeller is that torpedo propellers actually have an ejection component to them to fire them out to the launcher. And although it isn't probably as effective as actual well, in this case might not be as effective as a true ejector, it should help them clear the gantry and then get towards the target. And as you can see straight away, the missiles are more online for locking onto the laser beam rider there. So I'll actually save this vehicle. With that slight adjustment, just adjusting the amount of fuel. See, they are going off course, but most of the time now they are reacquiring the beam and then going in and, well, missing the target just because, yeah, it's long-range beam riders, they don't always strike the mark, but more are being in line, and with only a couple now being shot off course, so hopefully that will be a little bit more effective now. Next up, we have the Dark Shard by Char Dham, an absolutely enormous heavy flyer. Let's see how this fares. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be faring very well. Quite slow, actually very, very slow. It's all about how it turns to face its target. And it isn't turning especially well. It is, oh goodness, using yaw to turn, and it's losing a lot of altitude to make this turn. It's probably going to be doing a lot better if it had multiple targets, just so it is able to align and fire at one of them. Because if it's only firing at a single target, I think it will have a tendency to essentially miss with its poor accuracy of turning there. It's having great difficulty aligning its shot up to hit its target, and oh, it's getting hit by crams. So let's spawn in another one over here. And this is a cram bomber. Cram bombers are very good against the Onyx Watch. Had a couple already being utilised, and they were doing absolutely fantastic work against the Onyx Watch when they were disabled. And as can be seen here again, that barrage just smashes into the cannon tower, doing absolutely huge amounts of damage here. Unfortunately, didn't quite destroy, but that is a very large amount of damage, and these are quite small targets. Facing off against a larger target, that cram bomber will do an absolutely glorious amount of damage and do a huge amounts to winning the battles. Next though, we have the F4 Tantal Alt by Void. This too is also a little bomber, has a cram bomber there and a nice array of missiles above and below the line there. Oops, let's just see a little bit more detail. So we have some nice little interesting aesthetics here, utilising the actual ammo makers here as part of the hull, just to reduce size and make it a lot more streamlined, same with the gauge increases and just general components of the cram cannon. It does look like this has been completed without massive amounts of spin block cheese, so very nice work. That is very good going there. So let's send this against the cannon tower and see how it fares. I think mainly though, its missiles are going to be doing most of the work because, as I already mentioned, cram cannon and the bombs don't always do great work there. So most of the missiles lock on target. They have a mixture of EMP and fragmentation, and they easily nullify the cannon tower with almost no difficulty whatsoever. Here comes a fairly small cram bomb, and it does a small amount of damage, but that cannon will basically always be able to fire. Reason being is that cram cannons use a very small amount of ammo compared to the missiles which use a fairly large amount. So for a sustained fight, this will be very good in the long run there. I'm just going to try again in something a little bit more mobile, something like the Brushcutter. I want to see how it fares against anti-aircraft vehicles shooting at it. Okay, well it might be able to one-shot the Brushcutter before the Brushcutter gets in line. Okay, the EMP does a really rather nasty amount, disabling one of the guns. And there we go. So it's a fairly erratic movement, it seems. And it's avoiding most of the shots being launched at it, though it managed to miss fairly significantly there. So the Brushcutter is firing just slightly behind there, so it is doing very nicely avoiding the Brushcutter's fire, but it gets struck, detonating part of the wing, and it's going into a death spiral now. Is it able to defeat the target before it is annihilated? It's doing its darndest to be able to disable it, but the Brushcutter has a lot of heavy armor, it's absorbing all that EMP damage with ease. So even though missiles are striking on the turret, it's being absorbed by the heavy armor before it disables the turret. The side turrets though have been disabled. But yeah, it looks like this Tantal might actually be able to defeat the Brushcutter one-on-one, which is very, very nice. It's able to avoid a huge amount of the shots there with relative ease. Even when it slows right up for that turn, but it's lost enough of its wings that it's going to be very difficult, and if there was more shots in the sky, then I expect it would be shot and destroyed by now. However, it has pretty much internally detonated the cannon here, and it's only got, well, it's got one cannon left. This cannon will probably also be detonated shortly, and it's just a matter of time before it defeats that main gun. So now we have the Heavy Grain Train number 2 by Char Dham, which is a DE grade big gun on a stick. These designs are crazy. I love them. So, that is a single very, very fast shot, and it is purely kinetic. It is a kinetic sabot, so it goes very fast, punching holes straight through targets there. Not doing much damage it seems, but this will probably be able to punch holes several meters deep into one of the larger Onyx Watch craft, exposing it to more damage elsewhere, and also the range will be very, very nice. As you can see, the majority of shots there went straight through this one section. So very accurate, and so if there was something of more value here, that would have been destroyed rather quickly. And it's proving it to be pretty resilient, so it's taking a few nasty shots there. And yeah, there we go, it's firing, churning like blocks just flying off all over the place there. This is just a very interesting concept. Of course, sabot are pretty useless when it comes to anything, well, with shields. Even strength 1, definitely strength 2 shields will easily reflect something like that. Just because that's what shields are really good at. They stop kinetic sabots. But here we go. This is now firing kinetic sabot at Lucien, and it's just breaking through the outer layers of the armour there. Unfortunately, it didn't manage to strike anything too vital it seems, but those shells are making nasty holes in the outer armour. And if it had hit something maybe a little bit more on the turrets, it could have caused a chain detonation, breaking about half the vehicle apart, which would be very, very nice. It's also mostly heavy armour brick, so it is pretty tough in its own right, and not really drawing any fire to the more vulnerable gun at the top. Well, very nicely done. Now we have the Lone Shark by Guns McLegend. This is, that looks very much like a Grey Talons drone. What have we got on the gun here? So we have AP Cathead Solid Warhead, so a kinetic round there, and what also looks like to be magnet bombs. Yes, little bomblets there, fragmentation, active seeking. So yeah, so it's going to be a little bomber and kinetic shots there. So the kinetic isn't going to do too much, fairly small gauge, and the rate of fire I expect is decent, but even with a small gun like that, it's not going to be doing too much. But I think it could, for its concept of probably taking out light anti-air while this goes in for a bombing run, it will do all right. I would have preferred fragmentation, but I will admit that going for inertial fragmentation on everything it gets a little bit dull, even if, well, it's one of the most effective all-round rounds you can utilise in the game. Obviously there's some variations, but it is a very, very good round. So here we go, here come little bomblets. All lock on target. Nice little explosive fragmentation there, doing a good, decent amount of damage. Of course it hits the most useless part of this vehicle, which is quite a lot of metal, so it absorbs the damage with ease. But a lot of the Onyx Watchcraft do have wooden decks, and that would break through it quite handily. Well, it did launch another little bombing one, so it does have a tendency to drop them a little bit early, unfortunately. That could be a bit of a problem. Fortunately though, they do reload very, very quickly, so it's coming in for another bombing run. It should drop them shortly. Oh, it's dropped one already, and here come the next array. Just flying down, going to a more vulnerable target, and there we go. Breaking through the outer layers of the turret there. And even exposing some of the internals and actually breaking some of them off as well. So on its own it's not going to be doing too much, but it's going to be a good steady source of damage, which will be very useful for the duration of combat. We have another helicopter, the Heli Sniped It Mark 9 by Morton. So looks like, I thought, well, it looks like a realistic sort of build. You know, fair thing, and then it's got a railgun sitting on the front. To me it looks like started with a realistic build, realised that actually it wasn't quite working out as expected, and let's just slap a railgun on the front. Ah, love it. So, there's a big array of missiles, and they're having a bit of difficulty locking on flying up, but I think they must be radar seeker, because the ones which fired up have reacquired the target and are now aiming downwards. Yep, and that is a good array of shots there. Oh dear, the railgun got hit and detonated at the front there, blowing out the whole front of the craft. So it's just destroy all vehicles and then respawn everything in. Just want to see what this railgun is. So it's a very fast shell, as to be expected by railguns. What have we got? So good amount of rail charge, access intakes. It is a squash round. That should be able to do quite nicely against this target at long range, though it seems that the missiles are predominantly going to be the mainstay of this helicopter, doing good amounts of damage at long range and probably able to hit a nice load of targets. But as can be seen, it's not very accurate. This is the main gun. Was it? Oh, it is on. Let's change the accuracy down to 0.1 and resave that so it actually aims properly, because when it's at 2 degrees at this sort of distance, which it is holding out at, that 2 degree difference means it's just going to keep missing its targets over and over again. And so just adjusting the accuracy, yeah, immediately straight away hit at the base there. Nice. Another hash round strike. Another shot coming in. Just skim past the barrel there. I think missing by 1 block is reasonable. Similarly again, missing by a block at the top. Yeah, it's missing a little bit more, but there we go. Eventually does strike and cause a big hesh explosion inside, which would have detonated the ammo barrels should they have been there and not destroyed earlier. Oh, we have another design by the Mad Doc 82, the Predator Destructor. So we had the Predator Annihilator, the one with the laser cannons on. This is the Bullet Pig one, and it's already lost one of its guns, so let's destroy it and spawn it back in. So this has got the autocannon, the heavy bolters, and it's got the hunter-killer missile at the top there as well. An interesting little way of having it here, so having a simple autocannon hidden inside a spin block together with what appears to be a cram cannon, making it look like the 40k over the top massive heavy bolters, but still being a small gun. And here we have the autocannon, and wonder what round is being utilised in this one. So it is a squash round, again a nice round. I wouldn't have necessarily thought the autocannon would work was particularly a squash head, but it makes sense, I suppose. It's light anti-tank rounds regardless. And it should be firing at a decent pace. So go heavy bolters there. And yeah, there's a nice fast round actually, with a good rate of fire. I'm not entirely sure which would be better, the laser version or this version, because squash is very powerful, but the lasers proved themselves to be really valuable in a number of combats against the drones. I think basically having both of them in a force is worthwhile. Here we now have the hunter-killer missile coming in. There's been an EMP strike there with fragmentation, and it actually took out the AI. So yeah, worked very nicely. As always, very, very well done of keeping the 40k aesthetic and managing to squeeze in the fairly odd shape of From the Depths components. Admittedly, 40k is probably one of the better systems to be basing From the Depths vehicles on, just to how clunky and blocky a number of the 40k vehicles are, which allows a builder in From the Depths to more easily reproduce them, rather than realistic modern tanks with their nice thin profiles and curves. What was this one? This is the Scorpion by Sinflower. So it has a nice level of shielding, and this I expect is going to be function over form. Oh yes, fragmentation, inertial, a very nasty round, and by the aspects of it, it's going to be an extremely high rate of fire gun. Yes. Ooh. Though it is incredibly bursty, it doesn't have very many ammo intakes at all. So if this runs out of ammo, that's basically it. It's not going to be firing again during a battle. However, I have a feeling that this is going to be able to take out things like the Onager solo with ease. So high rate of fire there, fragmentation rounds coming in, and yet straight away it's striking its target, hitting a little bit behind, but immediately it's hitting its target and doing a good amount of damage. So it has absorbing strike, so yeah, easily absorbs the strike there, and just blocks being blown off with absolute ease, no problem whatsoever, breaking through the mostly metal hulls of the Onyx Watchcraft. And it's a decent spaced and speed of round there, which means that it would actually be pretty good against everything. So anti-air, anti-ground, and that's the AI dead there. So we'll send it to the cannon tower. Can it take out another target? Yep. So it lines up, and here come the next few rounds. A little bit slower to fire this time. I think it might have actually used most of its shells up, destroying the Onager there, and this is going to be the problem, that once it takes down one or two targets, it is going to have a little bit of difficulty with its rate of fire, and it's just not going to be able to maintain that very high and nice amount of damage which it had to start with, because of the fact that it's going to be input starved for reloading those shells in a nice fast manner. Still, as an alpha strike, it was able to take down one of the Onagers and do a decent amount of damage to the cannon tower before it had to reload. And that essentially is going to be enough for a battle. I'm very, very rarely outnumbered by the enemy in terms of numbers. Normally I am outnumbered in terms of block count, but by numbers I am not normally outnumbered. And so being able to take out 1 or even 2 targets by itself will put me in a fantastic lead straight away. And so finally we have the Thunderer, Ashes of the Empire version by Blixem ET2. So this is the big demolisher cannon, and this is a proper big demolisher cannon for basically mounted on the Lehman Russ hull. And this is going to do an insane amount of damage. It's, you know, nothing fancy. It is just a big forward-facing cram cannon. Took a nasty strike there at the front, but it's armor held, and then it fires 1 shot in retaliation and almost destroys its target in 1 hit, which is quite something. It blows a huge hole here, detonates the ammo, really close to destroying the AI as well, it seems. It looks like it's going to take 2 shots. But it's just absorbing strike after strike after strike at the front there. And then can it align the next shot up, or I think it might have actually lost its AI. They just stopped the cramshell dead in its tracks there. Good grief. So it looks like having difficulty aiming. But this is just absorbing. These are cram cannon shells, and it's absorbing every single one of it. So at the very least, it is definitely resilient. So we'll just try again. So I'd like to see it fire again without, you know, being annihilated almost instantaneously. So it turns fairly slowly. Just absorbed that cram cannon shell, and it fires 1 in retaliation. Oh, and it just fell a little bit short. But even that little bit short did darken most of the blocks and destroy a few on the vehicle there. So this is very, very big, powerful crams there. Fairly slow to refire, but when it does fire, you definitely know about it. Again, fell a little bit short, but it is having a little bit of difficulty with recoil, it seems. It lines up, took a nasty hit again at the front, but it just absorbed the strike and is lining up for another shot. And the shot is coming in. Again, it's falling slightly short, so maybe it needs to be a little bit closer. Might have to make sure that when it spawns in very close to its targets to maximise the amount of damage it causes. But it likes to retreat a little bit, which makes sense, but a solid hit in the right place, yeah, and it will one-shot targets, because that is a maximised cram. So unfortunately, it was running a little bit short, aiming a little bit short here and there, but if it does strike well, and strike true, it will do huge amounts of damage, which is true for most crams. But the resilience of this one puts a lot of them to shame, which when they get hit by a cram on their own, it's often down to whoever hits their target first. But we will now play with them all in the campaign. As I said, I have already recorded the campaign section because I then saved over my backup, which was a dumb thing to do before checking my recording, but that's how we have it. So I'll see you in a moment with post-commentary for the rest of the episode. And so here we are into the main campaign. So straight away I'm looking at roughly where I want to spawn in the new forces. And I wanted to kind of think, you know what, there are a lot of them I was testing against the Onyx Watch, and it seems a good target for them. So I decided to spawn them in up here by the Titan's Tundra. So send the logistics drones down south in order to facilitate that production of the new forces. So here we go, they've all been spawned in, moving the logistics drones away, and then combining all the new forces into their own coherent group there. Pulling them all out, and also getting them up to repair. So, in the meantime, the Twin Guard force gets attacked by Steel Empire. So, getting into the battle, ready for this here. And I think this is one of Char Dham's designs, though I'm not too sure. It's kind of glitched weirdly into the ground, and it looks like nothing I have seen. But yeah, it's just probably how it's glitched in and with the overlay there. So we've got a nice spread out, and there's not that many of the enemy forces here, so I'm feeling fairly confident. Shouldn't take too much damage in this battle here. Can't really see anything too nasty like Polaris or anything like that. So the battle begins, and the enemy just begin to fire. We've got a few nice laser fire coming in, and already destroying some of the enemy. So it's one of the older designs. I didn't even know that was still going. So it's nice to see some of the old designs still going around strong. Some very nasty strikes going on there. I think that's the Brushcutter there, and exploding internally and being flung up into the sky. Some of the other designs getting hampered by laser fire, though there is a lot of smoke going around, which I think is eliminating the majority of that laser damage, which is a bit unfortunate because lasers are pretty good. However, the rest of the fire and a good load of missiles are disabling and detonating weapons all over. So yeah, that tank there, Char Dham's one, I think that is the vehicle I was getting a bit confused on, which was shown just a moment ago. And here we have what I think is the last vehicle. Oh no, there is another one getting shot at by the simple lasers there. It is in smoke, it's getting detonated, it's basically dead already. Excellent! So it's now just waiting for this last one to disintegrate. Awesome! So a bit of a shock there, like, oh, look at all those designs damaged, but no, that's actually the fleet which is destroyed. We didn't actually take much damage, which is really rather nice, so get all of that repaired up and prepare for the rest of the forces. So there's a good number of tiles still to explore and take on, which means that all the other designs I still have in my blueprints folder can actually be utilised for future battles, which is great to hear. But that is going to be it for this episode. So thank you very much for watching this episode of From the Depths Ashes of the Empire Community Edition with myself and a Diffin. If you did enjoy the episode, please leave a like and or comment below, as it is always great to hear from you lot. Otherwise, that's it from me for now, and I shall see you next time. But until then, I'm out. Goodbye!